You got challenges that you're going to run across.
So let's go back to high school. Were you 3.0, 3.5 in high school? I mean, what did you say? I'm going to take this risk to go to Cal. Well, first of all, you had to have good grades to get accepted in Cal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was, I think, a 3.75 or 3.8, something like that. I wasn't valedictorian by any stretch of the imagination, but I was strong. And, I had a lot of extracurricular things, a lot of sports, a lot of athletics that I played. And, I had some leadership things and organizations that I was doing in high school. So I was well-rounded. And, I think that really bode well for, my being accepted to the school.
Did you talk about your dreams and goals while you were there? Did you tell people, hey man, I'm just here to get this. I'm gonna buy me a race car and I'm gonna go out here and win? And did you tell people that, or did they you didn't want to say what your goals were? Because a lot of people try to kill your dreams. So
right, those that were my friends and my confidants, they knew where I was headed, but it was not general knowledge by any stretch of the imagination. Or I'm sure, the word might have gotten out, and who knows what might have happened as far as somebody trying to derail, my situation, because Berkeley was extremely competitive. I mean, I had friends that were coming over from Asia saying that if they didn't maintain a certain GPA, they were sent back overseas and somebody else was sent back over to Cal in their place. I mean, that's the sort of competition I was up against. I mean, we're talking about, again, the sharpest people. Very few people get accepted to the school. So, everybody is creme de la creme, and there is no okey doke or half stepping. So when I was there, it was no half stepping. It was no, there was of course opportunities for me to go and, take a deep breath and stretch my legs. But, one of the things that I was recruited for, or not really recruited for, but I was asked to do was join the track team, because I was pretty good in track in high school. Mm-hmm. And I told the track coach I couldn't do it. I couldn't afford to derail or sidetrack myself from getting this piece of paper. I was very focused on, I need to get this degree so I could get into the industry, get that paycheck, and start racing.
Wow. So during that time, those 4 years, were you dream building? Did you go out to look at these cars? Were you looking, I can't wait this is the car I'm gonna get? Did you go test anything, or
Yeah, well, I was all about, in my spare time, which little I had, pursuing that dream. And what I'm talking about is oftentimes I would enter my street car that I told you was highly modified in autocrosses, which is like parking lot racing around cones. Cones set up the course, and it was against the clock. It wasn't wheel to wheel, but the fastest person who could get through the cone course in the least amount of time, right? I was doing that on occasion during the weekends. And, I was always watching racing on TV, after I got my studies done. So yeah, I mean, I always had my eye on the prize, I mean, it was something that, again, I was just bit by the bug ever since 8 years old, just shy of 8 years old. I knew what I wanted to do. The biggest thing that drove me and allowed me to be successful was the passion I had for this dream. I mean, I could very easily been discouraged. A lot of people, when I was, growing up, were like, y'all don't race, we don't do that sort of thing. You guys do stick and ball sports, right? When I first showed up for my first amateur driving school, where you learn, the rules of the road, the flags, all the sort of things that you learn when you start and participate in a race. When I showed up, with my car, people stopped talking and started pointing at me. I mean, this is Northern California, liberal Northern California. I wasn't in the deep South. I would have expected that in the deep South. But in Northern California, folks were tripping off the fact that I was out there. And of course, I was the only Black guy out there, right? Just like for the most of my life, most of my career, professional career, I've always been the only one in the room, whether it's been at Hewlett Packard, where I went to, go to work right after I graduated, whether it be, in NASCAR, just about all of the platforms that I've thrown myself into. I've almost always been the only brother.
Right. So tell me, what was the biggest challenge that you had with that? Was it, I'm talking about mentally, dealing with that? Was it at Cal? Was it at Hewlett Packard? Was it when you first started driving? When you get that real racist attitude or something. Where did you deal with that the most, and what did you do to get by with that?
Well, it was clearly when my wife and I gotten married, during my career at Hewlett Packard, and my wife believed in my dream. And, she said, after a 15-year career, mind you, at Hewlett Packard, at the age of 37, we had a sit down and she said, look, hun, you're not getting any younger and you're not getting any easier to live with. You're miserable doing what you're doing.
Right.
So you have to just devote all your time and attention, put your all into making your dream a reality, or say that you gave it your best shot and it wasn't meant to be. So I took a leave of absence initially from Hewlett Packard and then gained traction in terms of the racing relationships that I've made, such that we committed to moving from Northern California all the way to Atlanta, Georgia, without having a secured ride, without having a well-defined future. I was pursuing my dream and it paid off. But without question, the answer to your question, it was when I came to NASCAR, because they did not know who this black guy was coming from Northern California without a Southern drawl, without having come up through their ranks of racing. I paid my dues out in Northern California, road racing sports cars at the professional level after a while, right? But they still didn't know who I was, because in the Deep South, everything is about NASCAR. If you're not driving a NASCAR, you might as well not be racing.
NASCAR, with 40 million hardcore fans, is trying to shed its redneck reputation.
NASCAR realizes to continue to fill the stands, they're going to have to reach out to everybody.
Right.
So when I showed up on the scene, there was all sorts of concern and, wonderment and, you name it. And when I showed up at the racetrack to compete, I gained the respect of my competitors. They knew I was there for a reason. It wasn't any gift. I earned it. But the fans and the mindset of the fans being that somebody's infiltrating their domain,
Right.
it didn't go over well. I was booed. I heard the N-word murmured underneath people's breath. Nobody ever got in my face and called me one, and we'd have problems, right? But, I did hear it. There was definitely racism. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Mm-hmm. But how I handled it is that I realized that these are deep-seated beliefs and culture that these people have grown up with. And I can't hold that against them.
Right.
This is their family life. This is how they grew up. This is what they were like at the dinner table. These are the values that they had. They were very much, Bible Belt. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. When I came from liberal California to this Deep South and I heard all these yes, ma'am, yes, sir, I'm like, out there, it's, first name basis, right? It's all casual.
Right.
But very different vibe here. I learned a lot about the culture here, obviously. They learned a lot in the racing. Well, my teammates, I should say, the teams that I raced for and such, they learned about my culture. And it was important that we learned about each other's culture, because a race car driver is only as good as the car that the team provides him or her.
Okay.
You cannot win in a bad race car. The race car's got to be spot on, and you as the driver have to be spot on as well.
Make sure that you like and subscribe and hit the all button and all that kind of stuff, because we're going to have a lot of good interviews on this podcast.